eminently reasonable thing to do. But now here's the interesting thing. We can agree there's a broad spectrum of threats facing America. We can sit here on the web platform and we can talk about it. But what's amazing to me is you're still talking 0.5%. I mean, those ads that Ready.gov is running about home preparedness, where people are floating around in anti-gravity. Well, that's pretty weird. That, by the way, is part of the reason that new electrics thing, I think, has a lot more distance to run. I don't know what percentage of the linguistics have filled on it, but my expectation is the world of science is going to be rewritten a lot.
Thank you, George.
Yep.
Thanks, Raymond. Thanks, George. Uranus Rising, you have a question for George?
Yes, George. With the incoming solar and galactic energies, how do you see these affecting humans other than a possible mass die-off? I'm thinking in terms of mentally, psychologically, even spiritually.
All depends on the frequency. If you can give me a field intensity and a frequency, I can give you a somewhat decent answer. Let me explain. Most energies coming in from space are of a particular frequency. Like, let's take an ultra-low frequency, like the AM broadcast band. To an extent, AM broadcast radiation is non-ionizing. It'll just pass through your body, no harm, no foul. You start getting up to 50 megahertz or so, the 6-meter ham band, then radiation can cause a lot of heating, deep tissue heating and so forth, which can be very dangerous. Then as you move up in frequency, the effects move to the outer and outer and outer layers of the skin until at 2.4 gigahertz, about the frequency of your wireless router, or coincidentally very close to your microwave cook range frequency, you'll basically be heating up water near the surface of the skin, so you can burn the hell out of yourself, but it won't turn you into a drooling idiot. But then there are certain modulations that you can apply to microwave frequencies that will cause either pain on the surface of the skin or can actually change behaviors of people, make people afraid, paranoid, and so forth. And we've had this whole area in the language that deals with people needing assistance because they turn into such drooling idiots. I don't know what that is. I don't think Cliff knows what that is. But the language, and I think you guys have read it too, that and it might have been back in the Alta reports, but we know that whatever is in that grouping, it's something that's weird, scary, and I don't want to be the first one on my block to get it. And if that means wearing tinfoil on my head, then by God, I'm going to tin up.
Well, it sounds like everything you're saying has been in the language. Thanks, George.
Yeah, it has. The problem is until it starts showing up, there's not really a defensive measure I can wear, except I'm sitting on my desk here. One of my urban survival readers sent me a 1923 Danish Army helmet. That's one of those steel helmets like the Germans wore in World War II. The Danes got there first with these helmets that come down below the top of your, about basically to your collar. And I do wear that on occasion. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but if you wear a metal helmet or foil up your head, for some people there is a noticeable psychological difference. And part of the reason is probably because we are so bathed in this RF energy. You can take an antenna wire, throw it up in the air, and in some parts of major cities, you can pull 1 or 2 watts of electricity free out of the air just with a bunch of diodes and an antenna, and you can actually light up an LED with it. I mean, field strengths are that strong, but it's relatively new stuff. The radio was only invented, 100 years ago, and we're all bathing in this stuff every single day, assuming that it won't change anything. And that's kind of an interesting gamble, and yet we don't see government in a big hurry to regulate exposures. The Russian radio frequency exposure limit was about half or less what the U.S. standard presently is. It doesn't make sense to me, so, yeah, I wear my metal helmet now and then.
Be sure and send us a photo of yourself.
I should. I should post one.
Thanks, Uranus. Thanks.
You bet.
Thank you. George in a German costume. Wow. Okay, question from Dramrod.
Yeah, we're only covering a fraction of all the questions we got for you, George. I hope we can have you back sometime.
Oh, yeah. I'll come back again.
Here's a question from Bluebird. In your musings on time slips, you mentioned mass hypnosis as possible to make us unable to see or sense hidden by design, people, or actions. We know from Barney's that we can be mass manipulated to believe or act a certain way. Can a catalog of signs and symbols that will clue us in to who, when, how, where, and what is being hidden be developed?
Anything can be developed provided you've got a big enough budget and enough time and enough resource. In terms of you and me doing it, probably not. Here's what I was saying about time, though. You know how television is a sequence of, and motion pictures, a sequence of images, 30 images per second, and those images flicker with minute changes in each frame, and your consciousness averages that stuff out and turns it into a smooth movement. All I was saying about time slips is that there's that space between those frames of reality that we freeze on. There may be something there that is worth being discovered. The technology of getting there is scary. Some people think that psychotropic drugs will get you there, and therefore that has something to do with the weird time experiences that people using LSD and so forth have reported. Others say, no, it's really constant, and the only thing that's jumping around is our consciousness, which, in other words, reality is smooth. It's our perceptions that jumps around, and all drugs do is smooth it all out. So I really don't know. I mean, it's a really neat question. Unfortunately, we live in a world where the free exploration of science unbounded and the exploration of personal reality has been closely bounded by the powers that be, which have promoted different drug, alcohol, and so forth taboos. And likely the taboos are there because they are gateways to other layers of consciousness, which would make people less beholden to a particular power group. And so if you want to make people beholden to you, cut off their ability to personally access the source by making psychedelics, for example, illegal. And now it's a lot easier to brainwash them because you've got the only alternative out there. In a society such as we used to have on Earth, and it's well documented, by the way, in Graham Hancock's book, Supernatural, where he talks about the huge amount of archaeological evidence that supports very prolific drug use by ancient people. Is there something to be discovered there? Well, I don't know. They managed to build megalithic structures. You think so?
Yeah, thanks, George. George, as we end this discussion, we wanted to ask you one final question. We will have you back, probably for a separate show on survival, because that's a topic in itself.
Okay.
The economy is very important to all of us, but with Cliff's latest article, it seems the Earth changes may take front and center above everything else very shortly. Outside of Igor, you are the closest thing to a time mark. Our final question comes from Dead Poet.
Yes, George, definitely a time monk. And, we have hit you for 2 hours constantly asking you about Doom, and we hear from Cliff and you about Doom. But I want to know specifically, what you think humanity as a whole should do in order to stop this, all the things that we've talked about in this, all the causes per se, all the symptoms, and kind of get to the causes. But what do we do to keep this from happening again? And considering, for example, riots and destruction, they really don't solve anything. What would be some of your alternatives?
Well, assuming anybody makes it to 2015, the real question is, how do we keep from being enslaved or enchanted by either those who would pretend to lead us or those who would, how do we keep ourselves from being enslaved? How do we keep ourselves from falling into a trance? I don't know the answer. All I know is that between here and there, the best we can possibly do is try to maintain a high level of awareness and ride this wave like a surfboard and hope some of us make it to the other side so that we can focus more on the cooperative nature, more on the sharing aspects of humanity, and not try to profit by emphasizing the distinctions and differences between one another.
Thank you so much, George. It's been a pleasure. Like a fine wine, you do get better with age. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Although
I must be a hell of a wine by now.
Yeah, Dom Perignon or something. Although not an official member of the Webbots, to many of us you are a true time monk. John Ford, the film director, said, "You can speak well if your tongue can deliver the message of your heart." As a modern-day Paul Revere, we are grateful for your daily commitment to getting the word out on your site and how your message speaks from your heart. On behalf of Fox and all the members of the Webbot Forum, thank you, George. May you and Elaine have many pies to come.
Thank you. And happy pie to you, too.
Thanks, George.
Okay.
Thank you very much, George.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you, George. That was great.
George.
I enjoyed it. I hope it was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Cliff High said for me to tell you that you're a grumpy old bastard. Can you deny it on air?
No, but he's a rascal old bastard himself, and I defy him to. Yeah, I mean, we're really very different people philosophically. I mean, he's more of the Huckleberry clan, and I'm more of the peach or apple clan when it comes to pies. Yet we're still piemen at heart.
It's the crust that holds you together.
Well, I'm
all about
the crustier of us.
Okay, thanks, George.
Okay, have a great afternoon, guys.